Hello, welcome to today's live stream. We're going to be discussing data architecture and how focusing on a good process and structure can change chaos into order in your environment. Now, please forgive me, today is live, so Milos Murphy law in effect, anything that can go wrong. Today's live stream, we're going to be discussing data architecture and how focusing on a good process and structure can change chaos into order in your environment.
All my hearing soundtrack diffs on
Today's
this.
live, so Milos Murphy law in effect,
Damn it.
anything that can go wrong. And the first thing that went wrong. Connected to too many meetings at too much at the same time. So, welcome to it, ladies and gentlemen. I also have a 7-second delay on my end, which means that you're hearing things 7 seconds after I am. I do see you guys all in the chat. We're going to try this. You hopefully saw that lovely intro video. So, that's what's making a noise. We're good. That's why we're doing a dry run, huh, kids? Our agenda today is pretty simple. We're scheduled to go for about 30 minutes. It's a short, quick discussion because if we don't put some constraints on this, we could talk for hours. There are so many different permutations to this that we could just talk and talk. We could go into the history of data architecture, the different definitions, the whole ball of wax. We do that, though, and we're going to end up down a rabbit hole and be none the wiser. As such, we're going to keep this brief, focused, and get you out of here with some things to think about for the future. What I want to do is focus on framework, methodology, and process, key components of data architecture. We'll, of course, leave a few minutes for Q&A, but for those questions we don't get to, we'll definitely follow up. There's also the live chat. I see a couple people typing in the chat. Hello to all of you in the chat. You can also always send questions to us directly at info@senturus.com. At the end of today, I will share some more resources for those of you who want to discuss things further. Quick introduction. Some of you may already know me. For those that don't, my name is Patrick Powers. I've been involved in business intelligence, data architecture, data analytics, data warehousing, whatever term de jour you want to give it this week, for 25 years as of this year. A long time looking at foundations, architecture, structure, and believe me, I have seen both the good and the bad in that time period. I've seen projects go really well, and I've seen projects that stretch on for years because they didn't look at the big picture. I'm a trainer, an architect, data scientist for Senturus, qualifications and certifications in multiple BI tools, programming languages, databases, Power BI, Tableau, Cognos, SQL Server, Java, C++, etc. When you're old like me, you have time to acquire a few certifications and hang them on the wall. And with that, let's get into it. I'm seeing some live chat there. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. So I'm trying my best to look straight at you. Yeah, you right there. But of course, I've got things written down. I've got slides. We're going to do our best today. Okay? Since we're talking about architecture, there's going to be quite a few of these little building analogies. Comes with the territory because we are truly talking about building blocks and foundation. Now, architecture can mean different things to different people. It depends on their role, and I want to talk about those roles and perspectives, their backgrounds. Regardless of the definition, though, the one thing all groups hopefully can agree on is that architecture is the foundation and the framework for data analysis. So let's look at this. Here we have the first of my many analogies. This picture should fill you with dread. It should scare you. We see building after building just precariously placed on top of each other. One wrong move, and this whole thing collapses. Sadly, this is how too many people's data infrastructure looks. Modern applications cobbled together with 30-year-old legacy systems, bits and pieces built decades ago by people who aren't even with your organization anymore, let alone the thought of having any documentation for any of this. What we want. Now, look, we can discuss to death the aesthetics of living in this kind of a modern world. I'm not going to get on there. Let's focus on the strengths. Wide lines, wide lanes, processes don't get bogged down, buildings with solid foundations, buildings serving purpose to the greater whole. This is what you want. This is what you want to begin your framework of your architecture. And speaking of framework, again, I got to keep my eye on that chat window because I'm seeing some googly eyes down there. I don't know what the googly eyes are for, but maybe it's just because you guys aren't used to seeing me on camera. I'm not used to seeing me on camera. I'm not used to it at all. The Zachman framework. I like to call this the big picture of data architecture framework and enterprise architecture framework. For those of you not familiar, this is an overwhelming view of the world for sure. This is a perfect example of all of this being nothing new under the sun either. The first iteration of this framework was created in 1987. Over the years, it's evolved, it's changed, it's grown as technology's changed, it's grown as organizations change, and there are some that dispute it, debate it. I mean, hey, okay, it's 35 years old. But it's still a good place to start, especially if you're starting out on a project and you're not sure what you're looking for, what you're looking at. Okay? We're just using it today as a starting point. For most people, they've never been introduced to any kind of matrix or holistic view. Nothing. So from that perspective, this is a good starting point. Of course, your environment is going to have its own challenges and needs that a simple matrix can't address, but we have to start at square one. This framework can be described as a way to organize and analyze data, a way to put some structure around enterprise architecture, and most importantly, a summarization of perspectives. That one's key to what we're talking about today. Within an organization, data architecture is going to take on multiple perspectives, depending on who, your role, your needs. All these create a different perspective. The way a person in HR uses data for their job is different than somebody in finance or operations. As the overall architect, you have to keep track of these different perspectives to deliver a solution that works for everybody. This is where each of the columns comes in. Our why, how, what, who, where, when. These are our aspects, and without this knowledge, your project runs a serious risk of failure, or at the very least, only meeting a few of the goals and not meeting everyone's goal. We've all been on those projects where you start out saying, I'm going to do this for the entire company, but in the end, it's something that works for just one group, and everybody else is still using Excel. So we have to look at it as a whole. We have to look at everybody's perspective. We have to figure out. No more row has more comprehensive knowledge than any other row. Each of these rows is a perspective. It's only when we take them as a whole that we can get to our goal and have a good understanding. So, contextual, providing us with scope, external requirements, drivers, business functions. This is our executive perspective. Goals, metrics, costs, resources, all those fall into here. Conceptual, the business management perspective. These are the people that have to live with the final decision day to day. Logical, here we have that architect view, our high-level designers. Not quite the big picture, but not down to the granular level at the bottom either. Physical, that's our engineering view. That's the person who has to make the decisions. Do we go with Power BI? Do we go with Cognos? Do we go with Tableau? Do we go with Domo? Whatever the choice is. That's our engineering view. And then the last row, which I would figure a lot of you fit into either the previous one or this one, the detailed view. The day-to-day, the person who has to build this, the person who has to get you-know-what done. Putting all these pieces of the puzzle together. Now we know the different views. Let's move on to the columns. First column, why? Why are we doing this at all? What's our motivation? Are we looking to create new business processes? At each row, we have certain criteria. I lost my drink and I'm losing my voice. So, our executives want the goal list, the big overall why. Why are we motivated to do this project? Our managers need to know why this is important for their world. Please define the motivation for us. The architecture needs to understand the motivation to make sure all the rules and pieces fit. Our engineers want to know why the rules fit together. And lastly, our technician, our developer, needs to understand the why of the project to fit the details into existing architecture. How do we work with that 30-year-old foundation without ending up with that horrible picture I showed you earlier? Okay. So the why. Why are we doing this? Everybody's fun one. How? Such a simple question, isn't it? How? But man, you know what this creates? Meetings. Nobody likes meetings. Especially when there's so many buzzwords, new technologies, new perspectives, but they all come back to the same thing. How are we going to pull this off? Each of these looks at it from a different angle. They're all looking at what the process will be, whether it's the process list, the model, the diagram. They're all looking at a process, but from different levels of detail. And this is one of the biggest challenges with your project, because we're starting to talk about implementation, but you got one group at 50,000 feet just wanting a list of processes, and at sea level, there's our technician trying to get into the details, trying to figure out how it's all going to go together. The middle tiers here become very important because we need experience and we need skills that'll turn that process list, that high-level process list, into a valid model, into a diagram, into a specification. You need these middle selections, and you need a team that has a proven track record of delivering this kind of a process. Somebody who can be your liaison, somebody who can talk to that top level, somebody who can talk to that bottom level. Okay? Keep that in mind. Because without these middle sections, huge disconnect from top to bottom, and you're not going to run smooth. You're just not. Hey, we've talked about the why, we've talked about the how, but what are we doing? What are we actually doing here? What's our building materials? What's the model going to look like? What are the data diagrams? Where's the ERD? Where's any document? I got a piece of paper here from 2012. Does that help? No. What about the data? What's the breakdown of the data? Do we know what fields we're looking for? All of this leads to what? And this is a good time to mention tools. In this case, we're not talking about the difference between a Cognos, Tableau, or Power BI. Remember, this discussion is upstream from that, getting the data in the right format, the right place, in the right hands. So while it's important to identify the end users, they are, of course, part of the big picture. We don't want to conflate the two topics. There'll be time enough to implement tools once we have a foothold on the data. For now, we're focused more on the what of our data. What we'll be doing with it at the end of the day. Is this for inventory management? Is this for HR? Is this for the entire company? All of these, in addition to the earlier questions, need to be ratified and scoped before moving on to the next column. So let's pause there for a second. You should be realizing this is a lot of work. We have to identify, we have to label, we have to design. It's a lot of work. And you know what happens when you have a lot of work? The next big question comes up. Who? Well, I got a simple answer. Phil. Phil's in charge. Just Phil will take all the blame. Phil will do everything. All right, we won't pick on poor Phil anymore. We'll pick on Sean instead. Sean's in charge. Sean's going to do all the work. Sean's going to do everything. Now, in about 7 seconds, I should see a message in that live chat that you realize I've been talking about you. In all seriousness, who's going to implement this project is more than just deciding on which consultants to bring on board, which of course would be Senturus. But one major shortfall of any data architecture project is a lack of executive involvement, understanding, and sponsorship. Projects of this nature must take a top-down approach. They have to. If you want to succeed, they have to come from the top down. And there it is. There's my... Oh, well, I did at least get something in the chat window. So I know you're all still listening. That's what I was looking for. But seriously, without senior leadership, the project gets low priority. There's no urgency. There's no money. There's no resources. Things get derailed really quickly, don't they? Many projects end up with the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. In all my years of doing these kind of projects, I can't tell you how many places where I've seen silos because senior and executive management isn't aware of what the other groups are doing. Without that kind of oversight and without that kind of business leadership push, we're not going to get success. Okay? Because we also need governance. We need stewardship. We need ownership. Whatever term you want to apply to it. This is where our managers come in. So our executives are on board. We're doing great. But our managers need to also be involved here. Because they need to know who's going to own this. Who's responsible? Do I have to bring on new people to manage this data? Is this falling under my groups? What happens when something goes wrong? Who's in charge for that? The earlier we identify things like that, the better off we're going to be down the road. For who? Honestly, the lower levels can be easier to assign and identify. Because again, you'll probably want to bring on somebody like a Senturus, hint, hint, to help you with that part. But you need to understand the impact that this has across all of the organization, and mistakes can be costly. Now, a little more esoteric. You're all sitting here chatting on me, which is good. A little more esoteric. Where? This is a more modern question, if you will. Is this local? Is it remote? Is it cloud? Or is it at Phil's house? But it's more than just where does the physical box live for the data. It's the question of the repository. Where do we store the models? Where do the data diagrams go in? Do we have a proper check-in, check-out process? Again, ownership, stewardship, making sure we know what happens when something goes wrong. Are all groups involved with backups? Where are our backups? Where is our offsite storage? Where's the output go? Oh, wait, let's look at that last one for a second. Maybe one of the goals of our project is that we have to produce a file for a third-party system. Where's that going to go? That's something that if it doesn't get identified early on, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle because you're going to be like, oh no, our client needs this on their FTP site and nobody at the client has any idea what an FTP site is. Oops. What about security on that? Who's in charge of making sure that that's a secure FTP site and that the data is going to be there securely? Okay. All these things. Then we have the big where. Where is the data? Is it on Donna's desktop that's been sitting in Excel for the last 20 years? Is it on a legacy Access database sitting out in the warehouse that Phil's in charge of? Who's our ETL developer? Where are they located? Back to the who. Now we got who and where. So we need our ETL developer to get involved so we know where they are. Of course, the executive perspective is concerned with physical location. Is it situated somewhere else? Is it in our UK office? Is it going here? But the consultant's perspective of where is really the big question. Where is this? Where's the data? Where's it going to go? We're getting close. We're getting close. We got about 9 minutes, gang. We're almost there. Our last column, the one that we all know, we're ready for. When? Ah, yes. The when. We all know the executive answer, don't we? Yesterday. Management level says 50 man hours. Throw more bodies at it. We can get it done. I'm sure most of you have heard the old project manager joke. If it takes a woman 9 months to have a baby, can't we just use 9 women and do it in 1 month? Come on. We need a realistic when. And you know what? When is going to define itself if we've taken care of all these other columns. If we've scoped everything out correctly, if we've figured out the what, if we've figured out the why, if we've figured out the who, the when should actually be pretty easy. We should be able to define milestones. We should be able to stay relatively within those milestones and not have this turn into a 6-year project when we started out thinking it was 6 months. You all know what I'm talking about. Some of you have been working on projects for 3 years that you were told were going to roll out in 2018. Okay? If you've done all the other columns correctly and focused properly on those, hopefully when will even itself out. Again, having a good person on your team that is experienced with this and can manage this is extremely important. If that when's going to slip, they'll know. All right. I want to move you off into something a little easier. Here is a simplified version of this. This is a simplified framework of everything we've been discussing. Why? Because everybody needs emojis these days. And here it is with emoji. I got to look at my own screen for a second. Slightly different words on the rows. We're no longer talking about perspectives, but we're talking more about tasks here. Scope, model, system model, technology model, as built, functioning enterprise. This is all the same thing. The words have changed. The process and the framework hasn't. So whether you do it this way or you do it the other way, it's still the same thing, and you still need to be it. All right, we're running into the end here. This is my favorite slide in this whole presentation. We've discussed a lot of things today, and you're probably feeling a bit overwhelmed because what you thought was going to be a very easy project isn't. So remember, it's dangerous to go alone. Take this. We learned this as children sitting in front of our Nintendo systems, and it's still true today. And that's where Senturus comes in. We have that expertise. We have the know-how. We've done this for 20 years. We have succeeded project after project. We're here to help you get that foundation right. So, the plug you've all been waiting for, call us. When you're ready to start moving forward, you need someone. You need someone like us in your corner. Look, to anybody out there who's tried putting together furniture from IKEA, you don't do it without reading the instructions. Don't try to jump into this project without trying to leave out a column, leave out a row. We can help you wrangle those cats. We can help you put it together. You know, if you have a manual car and you try to take off from third gear, what's going to happen? You're going to stall and you're going to die. Don't try to start from column 3. Start from column 1. You need to start in first and move forward deliberately. And that's where we can help you figure that out. We can help you with the scoping, the proposals, figuring out ownership, figuring out stewardship. We can do all of that legwork, which leaves you to do your regular job, because that's an important part of this. If you don't have this time or the resources scoped out for this, you're going to have to do this with everything else. Okay? So please, keep that in mind. Give us a call. All right, that's it. That's all I have time for today, 326. I want to summarize a few key points here. Look, this is not an easy task. It's a huge undertaking. It's going to cost more, take longer, and need more people than you think. Just is. But with the right planning, with the right foundation, and the right help, we can minimize these risks. Don't skip the steps. Keep everything there. Thank you for coming today. As we have a few minutes left, I'm going to take a look again at that chat window. I promised you that I would have more information at the end. So please reach out to us at info@senturus.com. Those of you who still use phones, you can call us at 800 blah, 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 blah. Or come to our website at senturus.com. We've got all sorts of white papers, resources, documents, recorded sessions. And last but not least, like, subscribe, follow us here. I'm going to be doing another one of these in May. Yeah, May. In May. Plus, we have our regular monthly webinars on all sorts of different topics. So thank you. Thank you for coming here today. We look forward to seeing you later.